I've noticed a shift, especially in the black church, where you have people leaving because it appears that modern ideals are now entering the church, and there's a little bit of an imbalance when it comes to the men that's in that church. Have you seen something similar?
Absolutely. I've seen two things that are similar. So let's first talk about the transition of single ministries. So singles ministry used to be the place where young professionals who love Jesus, love the Lord, and are trying to climb the corporate ladder could meet. Most churches in most American cities, North American cities, that's what you had. So if you're in Chicago, if you're in Dallas, if you're in Atlanta, if you're in Indianapolis, if you're in Nashville, there are two or three churches that were the it churches. So then when you start breaking it down by race, for the black church in particular, that was the place that you went. Instead of going to the club, once you got saved, you were at the singles conference, you were at the singles meeting, you were at having brunch and breakfast with a group of other like-minded singles. What changed in that process is the church in general, the black church in particular, started having what was called premarital counseling. And anytime two relatively attractive, relatively successful people just had any type of potential interest, they ran them down the aisle by first getting them to go through potential leaders. But no, 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 don't do that. Let's go to premarital because God needs you to be married if you guys are going to lead and you guys can have an awesome ministry. So there were all these fairy tales that were attempted to be manufactured that were not authentic. And we saw people running down to premarital classes that had no business getting married because they didn't even pass the line test that we talk about. They weren't a man or a woman. They were at best a male or a female. And those two don't have not overcome the emotional trauma. So they bring all of the stuff and the baggage from their secular dating world into the church. Now, into the church, the teaching from a dating standpoint was pretty much everything around abstinence, no sheets, no sheets, no cloths, no pillowcases, uh, closed legs, get fed. It was all of these narratives that were being pushed and promoted that really didn't have anything to do with the call of Jesus, because Paul said in the Bible, it's better for you to stay single. But if you're gonna burn up with desire, it's better you ought be married than to burn through sin. So Paul in the New Testament, who was single and had the spiritual gift of celibacy, wanted people to be like him, but he knew the truth. You're gonna have to go at least get married. And part of the thing that got missed is there was no real alignment. So people were running down the aisle. All my friends in the 2000s ran down the aisle. Late 90s. Everybody, I was at weddings left and right. Everybody was running down the aisle from the church. And then in the 2000s, 2010, it started hitting. The divorce rate skyrocketed in the church because people who associated themselves with this narrative in the church in general, Black church in particular, were attached to a prosperity message, were attached to a name it and claim it message, were attached to Jesus wants your happiness message, and they never got into anything related to the work that's required as a Christian. Marriage is the number one ministry that any Christian will have. Let me say that again. Marriage is the number one ministry that any Christian will have. Your marriage, God won't even let you do stuff if your marriage ain't right. He will literally block blessings on top of blessings and opportunity on top of opportunity if you are not in alignment with him as a Christian with your marriage. So let's take that step. Let's take that a step back and say, what does that mean for me as I'm single and as I'm dating? If you can't line up with a person and make your marriage the number one ministry so God can show his love through the two of you, you have no business getting married. And that's the difference between my teachings at TMG and the teachings that I have within the church.
My early 2000s, I want to say. I was in the church and I was in the singles ministry, and I remember what I went through
Yeah.
and the conversations and the expectations and the you're going to see a lot of attractive women terrain, but God first.
Well, the women
Right?
you were meeting, God told them in a dream that I'm your wife and you my husband. There was a lot of false teaching around that. The law first mentioned basically states God intent for it. The first relationship between a man and a woman was a marriage. I'm sorry. Adam was fruitful and multiplying. He had a job, he had a personal relationship with Jesus. He had friends that looked like donkeys and bears. He had goons on his side. He was prosperous. And God said that man doesn't need to be alone. So I'm going to go ahead and create for him a suitable helper. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say, I'm going to create a suitable, strong, independent boss babe. I'm not going to create a modernized version of a cow. I'm not going to give you a different version of a giraffe or a lioness. I'm going to give you a woman because she was taken out of man. And remember, a lot of people miss this. In Genesis, God had man and woman on his mind, even though he created man first. So his intention was always to create woman. It just took Adam getting into position for him to be able to receive what God had for him. And too many in the church, especially in the 2000s, we weren't ready. I'll speak to myself as well. We weren't ready. We had no business near an altar. We had no business near a premarital class. We had no business near a relationship that would have that serious undertones because we hadn't done the work. So, and the church had not equipped us. Yeah, you got singles ministry, but if the marriage ministry ain't coming alongside two or three young men and young women and teaching them the truths about the word of God as it relates to what it takes to be in a marriage, then you don't have an effective singles ministry. You have a singles mixer. You have a singles group or a professional networking group. Because the goal of being in a singles ministry within the church, any denomination, should be helping you understand and identify your purpose in your singleness.